माया विनाशक मूषिकावाहना माया विनाशक मूषिकावाहना मातम नाशक मूषिकावाहना मातमहेश्वरी भवानी नंदन मातमहेश्वरी नंदन महागणपते मंगलचरणा महागणपते मंगलचरणा महागणपते मंगलचरणा महागणपते मंगलचरणा मातंगवदना नंद सदना मातंगवदना नंद सदना आनंद सदना। भुवनत्रया हे भूमिनायका भुवनत्रया हे भूमिनायका हे माधवा हे मधुसूदना हे माधवा हे मधुसूदना भुवनत्रया हे भूमिनायका भुवनत्रया भूमिनायका हे माधवा हे मधुसूदना हे माधवा हे मधुसूदना भुवनत्रया हे भूमिनायका भुवनत्रया भूमिनायका हे माधवा हे मधुसूदना हे माधवा हे भुवनत्रया हे भूमिनायका भुवनत्रया भूमिनायका हे माधवा हे मधुसूदना हे माधवा हे मधुसूदना माधवा हे मधुसूदना। भज रे मानस भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं कल्याण भज रामं भज रे मानस भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं कल्याण रामं भज रामं कल्याण रामं भज रामं कोदण्ड रामं भज रामं कोदण्ड रामं काभिरामं भज रामं पावन रामं भज रामं पट्टाभिरामं भज रामं पावन भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं भज रे मानस भज रामं भज रे मानस भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं भज रामं पांडुरंग श्रीरंग गोविंद भज मन आनंद भज मन गोविंद भज मन आनंद भज मन मुकुंद भज मन राम भज मन मुकुंद भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन राम पांडुरंग श्रीरंग भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन राम पांडुरंग श्रीरंग भज मन राम भज मन यदुवर भज मन मुरहर भज मन यदुवर भज मन यदुवर भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन राम पांडुरंग श्रीरंग भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन मुरहर भज मन रघुवर भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन राम पांडुरंग श्रीरंग भज मन राम भज मन राम भज मन राम पांडुरंग श्रीरंग भज मन राम पांडुरंग श्रीरंग भज मन राम पांडुरंग श्रीरंग भज मन राम ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शांति शांति शांति। Together we will chant Bhaj Govindam verses 20 to 31, please. Bhaj Govindam chanting verses 21 to 31. भगवद्गी भज गोविंदम गोविंदम भज मूढ़मते संप्राप्ते सन्निहिते काले नहि नहि रक्षति डुक्रुन्करणे भगवद्गीता किंचिदधीता गंगा जललवकणिका पीता सकृदपि येन मुरारिसमार्चा क्रियते तस्य यमेन न चर्चा पुनरपि जननं पुनरपि मरणं पुनरपि जननी जठरे शयनम् यह संसारे बहुदुस्तारे कृपया पारे पाहि मुरारे रथ्याचर्पटविरचितकन्तः पुण्या पुण्यविवर्जितपन्तः सेन्द्रियमानसनियमा देवं द्रक्ष्यसि निजहृदयस्थं देवम् कस्त्वं कोऽहं कुत आयातः कामे जननी को मे तातः इति परिभावय सर्वमसारं विश्वं त्यक्त्वा स्वप्नविचारम् त्वयि मयि चान्यत्रैको विष्णुः व्यर्थं कूप्यसि मय्यसहिष्णुः भवसमचित्तः सर्वत्र त्वं वाञ्छस्य चिराध्यधि विष्णो त्वम् शत्रौ मित्रे पुत्रे बन्धौ मा कुरु यत्नं विग्रहसन्धौ सर्वस्मिन्नपि पश्यात्मानं सर्वस्रोऽसृज भेदज्ञानम् कामं क्रोधं लोभं मोहं त्यक्त्वात्मानं पश्यति सोऽहम् आत्मज्ञानविहीना मूढा ते पच्यन्ते नरकनिगूढः गेयं गीता नाम सहस्रं ध्येयं श्रीपतिरूपमजस्रम् नेयं सज्जनसङ्गे चेत्तं देयं दीनजनाय च वेत्तम् सुखतः क्रियते रामभोगः पश्चाद्यन्तशरीरे रोगः यद्यपि लोके मरणं शरणं तदपि न मुञ्चति पापाचरणम् अर्थमनर्थं भावय नित्यं नास्ति ततः सुखलेशः सत्यम् पुत्रादपि धनभाजां भीतिः सर्वत्रैषा विहिता रीतिः प्राणायामं प्रत्याहारं नित्यानित्यविवेकविचारम् जाप्यसमेतसमाधिविधानं पूर्ववधानं महदवधानम् गुरुचरणाम्भुजनिर्भरभक्तः संसाराध्यचिराद्भवमुक्तः सेन्द्रियमानसनियमादेवं द्रक्ष्यसि निजहृदयस्थं देवम् भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते सम्प्राप्ते सन्निहिते काले नहि रक्षति डुक्रुन्करणे We have covered the way to success, the last topic in the chapter renunciation. Renunciation spells success. Whatever anyone succeeded in any field, it is because of the spirit of renunciation in that person gives that success. Success and renunciation are the same meaning. In the philosophical parlance, the other side of the coin. Therefore, we studied this in the previous class thoroughly, how success is achieved through attitude of renunciation. So, if you are really practicing the true renunciation, you will be achieving success in your field of activity, and you will be enjoying the inner composure, inner tranquility, the peace of mind, as well as you will be reaching the higher echelons of perfection, higher evolutionary ladder. You will be reaching higher heights of perfection also through renunciation. So today we will take up another topic of in the renunciation chapter, the bliss. So how renunciation provides bliss. Renunciation is bliss is the greatest title, greatest topic. So everybody in the world, if you carefully analyze whatever they're trying to run after or they're trying to avoid, they are only looking for peace, happiness, contentment, satisfaction. These are all synonyms. They are chasing these external objects and beings in the world of desired continuously, relentlessly, but nobody ever found the peace and happiness in the world. There can be no peace, no happiness, unless one has to realize, one has to renounce, one has to drop your little self, your local identity. You have to give up your self-asserting ego. That idea of I am should be dropped. Then only the peace and bliss can be experienced. So the idea of I and mine, me and mine, these are all the things which disturb your mind, gives you sorrow and suffering. So without clean dropping your individuality, your identity, your little self, there is no peace and happiness in life. The famous philosopher E. Carpenter, Englishman of great spiritual experience, he says, never before could I have believed it, but I see it all now. There is no happiness unless you have clean dropped thinking about yourself, your individual ego. You got to clean drop it, completely drop it. Then only you will enjoy commensurate peace and bliss. There is no happiness unless you have clean dropped thinking about yourself. But you must not do in halves. You must not do in parts. You must not do it by halves. While even there is a least grain of self left, of ego left, it will spoil it everything. You will be agitated. You will be disturbed. You will be stressed out. You must leave it all behind and vouchsafe the personality and mind that much sympathy as to any stranger, no more, no less. There is no shortcut for enjoying peace and happiness unless one has to learn to drop that ego, the identity, the little self. I am, I and mine must be clean dropped, says the great philosopher E. Carpenter. Hence must you banish, cast away all attachment and anxiety. You got to drop it to enjoy the peace. Brush aside fear of censure and hope of appreciation. Never bother about praise or censure, praise or blaming. Never a problem. Never get identified with those fluctuations of this world. Honor and dishonor. It's a part of life. Most people dishonor, few people honor you. The honor and dishonor immaterial when you drop your ego and function in the world of service and sacrifice. Brush aside the fear of censure and hope of appreciation. Consider yourself as you would a stranger. Always think you are a stranger. You are a person who is conducting his life as a stranger. Cast aside your cherished personal ego. You drop your personal ego and pass disembodied out of yourself. You completely pass disembodied, means you are completely not identifying with your limited individuality. Pass through the gate of indifference. Pass through the gate of indifference, careless, through the door of knowledge. So, knowledge of maturity, knowledge of higher understanding, a nobler understanding. The gate of vast majority of the people, if not all, are indifferent, careless to this ego and individual identity and suffer the sorrows thereof. Anyone, anywhere in the world suffering stress, anxiety, depression because of his own little self, his own ego, his own individuality. That I and mine is the killer disease. Cast aside, says the Vedanta. Consider yourself as you would as a stranger. The moment you drop your ego, you become a stranger to the world and you enjoy the peace and bliss. Pass through the gate of indifference, through the door of knowledge, through the door of self knowledge, into the palace of peace and bliss. Once you gain the knowledge of reality, your real identity, you are the Supreme God, the Atman, you achieve the peace and bliss commensurate with your efforts. Through the door of knowledge into the palace of peace and bliss. The great S.V.Satyanarayana Upanishad proclaims the great truth, may you enjoy bliss through renunciation. Isavashyamidam jagat yatkinchat jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjidaha magradah kasya svidhanam. Renounce and enjoy, says the Upanishad. Isavasya Upanishad proclaims this truth. May you enjoy this through renunciation. Enjoy the bliss through renunciation only. This is a great understanding and maturity. One has to put in enormous effort to never allow the ego disturb your intellectual decision and execute your actions without ego and egocentric desires is the advice given. Bhoga in Sanskrit means enjoyment. Yoga means spiritual practice. Yoga is derived from Sanskrit root yuj, means to join, to unite. So joining back is yoga, uniting back. So you are uniting or joining back to that which you separated from now. The self, the Atman, every human being is disconnected the moment they are born in this world. They lost the Supreme Self. So yoga means renunciation. So any attempt to get back to the Supreme Self is yoga, union with the Self. People construe these two words as antonyms. So yoga is a spiritual practice and bhoga is a sensual enjoyment. They always see the difference and distinction between these two. But if you carefully analyze, if you go to the depth of understanding, the happiness, the pleasure, the peace and bliss, the enjoyment is in renunciation. So they consider, illiterates consider bhoga is to be opposite to yoga. Yoga is union with the self, bhoga is sensual indulgence, is general misconception. But that is not so. If you study them carefully, you will conclude that they are not different. Bhoga, enjoyment, is nothing but other than yoga, renunciation, because sattvic enjoyment, sattvic happiness is provided by yoga only, union with the higher values, union with the self. It may sound revolutionary. How can yoga be bhoga? This is what the general contention. But if you go delve deeper and deeper into the Vedantic knowledge and practice, you will understand the yoga is nothing but the bhoga, means highest enjoyment in highest spiritual practice, which is the supreme state of peace and bliss of infinite nature. Bhoga is the enjoyment, nothing other than the yoga, renunciation. It may sound revolutionary, but it is the truth. there is no real enjoyment. There is no real happiness. There is no real enjoyment. There can be no real enjoyment unless you are poised, you are peaceful, you are composed in the mental state of renunciation. Those who are mentally renounced, established in the renunciation, they enjoy supreme peace and bliss as along with the success. There can be no real enjoyment unless you poised in the mental state of renunciation. No sooner you renounce the arrogating ego, no sooner you drop your ego. Ego is nothing but an arrogating self of this body, mind, intellect claiming to itself I and mine, this limited identity. No sooner you renounce this I and mine, arrogating ego, then you become the personification of bliss, of joy, of happiness, of ecstasy, because of the clean dropping of your ego and egocentric identity. You enjoy supreme bliss. Hence, you turn spiritual. The real spirituality is nothing but enjoyment of renunciation, true renunciation. That is spiritual. The path to the Supreme Self, the path to the enlightenment, the way to bliss of self-realization, the way to the bliss of enlightenment, self-realization is nothing short of is the crucifixion of little self. The moment your small self, the ego, is crucified, is dropped, the real happiness, real bliss emerges. That is a state of enlightenment, the supreme peace and bliss. So, bhoga is nothing but yoga, is nothing but renunciation, renouncing your ego and egocentric desires in your limited identity, I and mine. If you drop, the universe embraces with happiness, success, and peace, supreme bliss, as well as path to enlightenment as well, you will achieve. So, there can be no peace, no happiness unless you clean drop, renounce your little self, your limited identity. This I and mine is the killer disease in everyone. So there is no happiness who has ego, who has self focus, self identity, individual identity, and forgot the supreme bliss, supreme state of enlightenment. The ultimate source of everything is the reality that is not contacted at all. Such a person suffers with stress and strain. So, attachment is the prime cause of mental agitation and sorrow. So, anyone is suffering because of attachment. The attachment is the root cause of any suffering anybody experiencing in this world. When you are attached to material objects like a car, a house, a money, all wealth items, when you are attached to material objects, to wealth, you are constantly riddled, constantly engaged in stress and worry and anxiety. Worries and anxieties grip you because of your attachment to the worldly objects and beings. And the anxiety to procure more and more, the craving, mental craving for gaining more and more, constantly makes your mind worried, anxious. You are riddled with worry and anxiety more and more, and worry about preserving it. Having earned a lot of money, you are worried about how to preserving the wealth and losing it at the end. All are painful. Worries and anxieties grip the human being who is caught up in the world of running after the wealth. Thus, a newly fixed carpet in a house, a china, you value or any such carpet, chinaware, prized possession can cause mental agitation. So all mental agitations and disturbances are due to attachments, and attachment spells disaster. You lose the object, you lose the happiness, and perhaps the being man, you lose the life of that being as well because of attachment. Suffering and sorrow is the result of attachment if you are attached to any object or being. Similarly, the current scenario, if you observe the world, a boy meets a girl, he gets attached. Then what he'll do? He raises a family, gets attached to family, children. A mother attached to her child would cause the mind to be agitated and depressed. When you are driving your personal expensive car on a rough and rugged road, your heart troubles because you are attached to the car. Whereas the same ride in a hired car becomes enjoyable because you don't claim anything. So you enjoy the ups and downs of the road. Thus, when you are detached, you enjoy the world more. That explains why you enjoy the tragic movie or horror movie or a great tragedy also. You enjoy the movie because you are not the part of it. When you clean drop yourself, the real renunciation, that there lies the real bliss and real happiness, real enjoyment, says the Vedanta. But you got to clean drop your identity, your individuality, your ego completely. Then only the happiness generates. Shakespeare's play, Hamlet, it was filmed with a famous actor, Sir Laurence Olivier. That is the great hero of that movie, Hamlet, Sir Laurence Olivier. It depicted a great tragedy of Shakespeare's plays. Even a bit of it was very sad. So it is the greatest tragedy of times. Every bit of it was very sad, melancholy, agony. Yet the Hamlet is the greatest movie of Shakespeare. It's yet magnificent. It drew millions of admirers all over the world. There are millions of admirers flocked for the Hamlet to watch. They enjoyed the movie thoroughly. The great tragedy, they went to see the movie and they enjoyed the movie thoroughly. Many saw it over and over again. They saw many times the movie. There was a charm about it that kept everybody spellbound. So there is a great charm in watching that Hamlet movie, even though it is tragedy, and kept everybody spellbound, wonderstruck. Notwithstanding all that, would anyone desire to be Prince Hamlet in the movie, in real life? No, because it's a tragic movie and he is experiencing suffering and sorrow in the stage, in the movie. Nobody wants. Everybody is spellbound. Notwithstanding all that, would anyone desire to be Prince Hamlet in the movie? Would anyone like to be involved in the tragic circumstances? Everyone may enjoy the movie, but none would everyone may enjoy the movie, but none would like to get anywhere near those scenes. Nobody likes to be in tragic circumstances. But in the tragedy movie, everybody watches and enjoys. Would anyone like to be involved in the tragic circumstances? Everyone may enjoy the movie, but none would like to get anywhere near those scenes, much less get mixed up with them. They don't want in their personal life any tragedies, but they enjoy the tragedies of comedies, tragedy movies on the screen, because it is apart from them. They are not part of the tragic movie. Therefore, they are enjoying. It is a source of enjoyment. Everyone may be enjoying the movie, but none would like to get anywhere near those scenes, much less get mixed up with them. If that be so, what makes it so attractive? Why tragic movie is so attractive, so enjoyable? How does a sad movie, a movie with pile of dead bodies, giving such a great happiness, make millions happy? A careful study, you will find that the enjoyment arises from one's aloofness, one's withdrawal, one's separateness, one's liquidation of their ego from the happenings in and around them on the screen. It is one's detachment from it. Once you are disconnected from the worldly affairs, it becomes a source of entertainment for you, source of enjoyment for you. It's only based on renunciation and detachment you enjoy. On a careful study, you will find that enjoyment arises from one's aloofness from happenings on the screen. It is one's detachment from it. So, attachment you suffer, detachment you are happy. It's a law. So, on a careful study, you will find that the enjoyment arises from one's aloofness from the happenings on the screen. It is one's detachment from it, not being involved or attached, entangled in it. Now, when you look upon a movie as a witness, so as a sakshi, when you look upon a movie as a witness, you enjoy it thoroughly. When you get directly involved in it, when you are entered and get attached, you suffer. Some even sob and cry because they're totally involved in the affairs of the movie as happening with to themselves. So it is with this world. This world is like that. Keep your mind ever anchored to the Supreme Self, Divine Self. Within, all the time, you are that Supreme God, the Atman, the Self, nothing short of it. This personality, this world doesn't exist except the Self and Self alone. Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya. Jagat is a changing phenomena, non-existent, an imaginary projection, an illusion. So, self within, you got to anchor and look at the world as you would see the movie. Keep your mind anchored to the divine self within and look at the world as you would see a movie. You must learn to live in your homes. So you must live a renounced life, means a mentally detached. While living physically, your mind must be detached from the affairs of the world, or else you will suffer. You can live in the home with the family members, with the wife and children and husband and brothers, sisters, parents, no problem. You don't have to leave your physical position or station or occupation. You don't have to retire to jungles to live a life of renunciation. You got to practice renunciation in the din and roar of marketplace. It is just a mental disconnection, nothing to do with your physical location. Keep your mind anchored. All the time, mind must be fixed on the Supreme God, the Atman, while you are engaged in the worldly affairs of duties and responsibilities. You must learn to live in your home, with your family. You can run your offices and business houses. You can earn money. You can be with associates. Meet the world all the time impersonally, detachedly, not from a personal angle, as a sakshi, a detached witness, just onlooker, a stranger looking at it. That is your perception. Without getting attached to them, entangled with their affairs. When you look at the phenomenal world thus, when you look at this world, phenomenal world of objects and beings, everything from that standpoint of detachment, from an impersonal angle, from as a sakshi, view it objectively. It lends a charm. It lends a great charm. It is beautiful and wonderful. It is very beautiful and wonderful. The world becomes source of enjoyment. It is charmed. You get charmed up and beautiful and wonderful. You enjoy every bit of it. You enjoy every moment. But if you view it personally, if you view the world personal angle or egoistic angle or angle of attachment, you lose your objectivity, sakshi bhav, and get involved and entangled in it and suffer the sorrows thereof. You get crushed, tormented, stressed and strained. Worries and anxieties engulf you. You lose your objectivity. Your life turns miserable. You suffer. It is a universal law. So, you got to practice this sakshi bhav, like watching a movie, tragedy movie from a distance. You are not part of it, therefore you claim that the movie is the great movie. It was giving such a source of enjoyment. So, almost every human being, if not all, suffers from this nagging weakness of attachment, lack of fundamental principle of renunciation. They don't have awareness and they don't learn and practice this great trait of renunciation. It's unknown to humanity and suffer the sorrows thereof. To rise above it, above this world of attachment, you need to strengthen your intellect. Strong intellect alone can help you detach from the world and its affairs. Strengthen your intellect with strong spiritual knowledge. So, this spiritual knowledge, which is the knowledge of the reality, knowledge of your real identity, once you anchor to that, immediately commensurate with that, you will get peace and bliss, because you are no longer attached to the world, you are attached to the Supreme Self. A knowledge which exposes the absurdity of your personalized relation with the world. Constantly you are relating to my wife, my house, my husband, my children, my life. This is the killer disease. The moment you gain this knowledge of reality, knowledge of your real identity, you are that Atman, the Supreme Self. The knowledge exposes the absurdity of your personalized relation. You no longer be interested in any personal relations, because your relationship with the divinity is fixed, anchored to this world. Your immaturity is no longer exists. You begin to understand the hollowness, the emptiness, the futility of such personalized relations, I and mine, the arrogating relationship, my wife, my house, my husband, my children, it automatically drops. With the knowledge seeping in, you gradually develop a sense of detachment. The moment you understand with the powerful intellect that you are that supreme self, this personality, this individuality is nothing but an imaginary projection upon that supreme reality. This knowledge, once you gain, once you absorb, once you assimilate, once you digest, you live a life of renunciation naturally. Therefore, knowledge of the self directly proportional to renunciation. The more you gain knowledge, the more renounced you are from these affairs of the world. The world will not tease you, world will not trouble you, world will not crush you. You will not suffer by the world. You are unaffected by the worldly fluctuations because of the spirit of renunciation you developed due to the knowledge of reality you gained and converted the knowledge into wisdom and developed a strong intellect. This is a perfect understanding. Your immaturity is gone. You begin to understand the futility of such immature relationship with the world. With the knowledge seeping in, you gradually develop a sense of detachment towards the world. You automatically withdraw from the world. The dawn of detachment drives away the mist of worry and anxiety. The moment you gain the knowledge, the dawn of detachment drives away the mist of worry and anxiety. Because the moment you gain the knowledge, you get detached from the affairs of the world, then you automatically cease to experience any worries and anxiety, stress and strain, automatically leaving you in the state of peace and bliss, commensurate with the stress and anxiety, worries. You enjoy peace and bliss because you learn to be detached. This is a beautiful example given in Shastras. That's a beautiful example one has to memorize. What is the example is the life of detachment. A practitioner of life of detachment is not understood by normal human beings because they don't have any higher purpose in life. They're all following a rat race, a herd instinct, a sheep following sheep. People are entangled to the objects and beings and duties and responsibilities for fulfilling their acquisition and enjoyment requirements. For them, whole life is nothing but acquisition and enjoyment. That is the be all and end all of life. They can't conceive anything higher, subtler, or nobler ideal in life. They don't have a cause. Nobody has a cause to work for. The only life they lead is a selfish and self-centered, ego and egocentric life, and suffer the consequence of sorrows, anxiety, stress and strain, and that is the tragedy. So here is a beautiful episode communicating the great message of life of renunciation and its value in this day-to-day affairs. In day-to-day life, you can practice this and enjoy the benefits of renunciation. The two childhood friends happen to meet after a long lapse of time. They are both childhood buddies. They met after a long lapse of time. One of them was a very successful businessman. He earned a lot of money, tons of money he earned because he is a businessman. The other friend who became a spiritual mendicant, a spiritual renunciate, a sannyasi, engrossed in conversation, both met after a long time, they both were discussing and engrossed in conversation. They lost the track of time. They started discussing themselves. So they lost the track of time because they met after a long time. They are exchanging their past nostalgic experiences. And they lost track of time. It became dark and reached the bank of a river late in the night or evening. Now they had to cross over to the other side of that river, and the boatman refused to ferry them across as it was past of his working hours. Their side, what currently they are staying, their side was river was fully infested with wild animals and forest. Dense forest was there, so they have no choice but to cross over to go to the other side at any cost, because in the night they could be in trouble because of wild animals. A tiger or a wolf can devour them. The businessman offered the boatman a lot money, a chunk of money, extra money to ferry across beyond his working hours. Understood? The ferryman yielded, agreed because of overwork, overtime he can do and get more money. They were freed, they were ferried, means they were taken across the river to the safer side, other side of the river, both of them gone the other side, where the businessman's mansion there. So there was a businessman's house was there, so they can both can take rest in that house. That night, after entertaining his guest with the supper, with the dinner, the businessman inquired this spiritual sannyasi. Both are friends. So tell me, friend, of what use this renunciation, this your stand of this renunciation, when you got to ferry across from the other side of the river where wild animals were there to the place where we are enjoying. The money only helped you. That is the businessman's language. He is speaking to him. What is the use of this spiritual renunciation where you don't get anything, you don't have any money? If I had not possessed the money, if I would have not earned as a business or professional, I have taken up a right field, I got money, therefore we are both were saved. Both of us, if not, both of us would have been devoured, eaten up by the wolves, by the tigers, by the jungle wild animals would have eaten us up. We are saved because of the money. That's what businessman tries to convince the great spiritual renunciate of his friend sannyasi. Has not your way of life proved to be impractical? You are living a sannyasi life, a spiritual life, and no interest in any earning money. And now, what is that saved is the money of businessmen, and whatever the renunciation you practiced, it did not save practically the life. Then the sannyasi replied, because the sannyasi is having wisdom, the glory and grandeur of his knowledge based on his renunciation. So he replied with these wise words to the businessman: my dear friend, undoubtedly you are right that money has helped us today to ferry across the river and saved our lives in this beautiful mansion and having dinner and rest. If not, we would have been eaten up by the wolves on the other side. But the question is this the money helped you today, but was it its possession or its disposition that really helped us? Is it giving up of that money, that wealth to that ferryman helped you, or possessing the wealth into your pocket which helped you? Is the question he posed to the businessman. The problem with renunciation is that it is very detestable, very disagreeable, distasteful. In fact, it is, you hate, everybody hates renunciation, life of renunciation in the first place, in the front. Therefore, people find it hard to accept the concept of detachment. Nobody likes to be detached. Everybody want to be attached because of they do not understand the depth and clarity of advantages and merits of the grandeur of this detached life. They don't understand. They have no enough intellect to grasp the deep embedded quality of life of a renunciation. The very thought of it, of detachment, sends a shiver down the spine. People are scared by the life of renunciation. The idea of detachment stings you, pains you. Little do you realize that the sting of renunciation means the renunciation, once you get into the system, it transports you to a higher plane. It lifts you to the higher altar. It gives you greater wisdom, greater insight, takes you to the permanent peace and bliss. It anchors you to the supreme state of happiness, bliss. It relieves you from all the worries and anxieties you are suffering from associated with the world. The world teases a person who is attached. World cannot tease a person who is detached. The life of renunciation alone provides you supreme peace and bliss. It relieves you, frees you from all worries and anxieties associated because of the world. The initial feeling of renunciation acts like a wasp's sting in a dream. When you are a dreamer in the dream, a dreamer's pain is momentary, with the sting of a wasp from it, but it helps you to wake him up from the deep slumber of nightmare. He is freed from all the trouble, all the worries, all the anxieties pertaining to the dream world of objects and beings and attachments in the dream. The moment he wakes up from the dream, the whole dream phenomena completely nullified, disappears, and suffering also goes. Practicing renunciation, practicing detachment, therefore, may be initially painful. It's like practicing physical fitness, practicing exercises, practicing yogic asanas. Initially, there is a pain involved. It is a little bit painful. Any constructive activity is painful in the beginning, but it is a long term happiness and peace and enlarging enjoyment it provides in a long term basis. One has to put up with the displeasure in the beginning only. Once you get used to that frequency of life, of exercises, of fitness, of yogic practices, the life of health and life of peace and bliss, life of happiness you enjoy, and that happiness keeps on increasing, enlarging circles. It takes you to the supreme state of peace and bliss, and ultimately end up in enlightenment, the infinite happiness and peace it will take you. So, therefore, practicing detachment, therefore, may be initially painful, but it is all gainful. It is a bounty. It is a great blessing. The detachment of life, the knowledge of detachment gives you abundance of peace and bliss. It is uncountable bliss it will give you, only provided you pay the price of going through initial practices of detachment. It ushers you to the greater planes of happiness. So the more you detached, the more you happy, the more you attached, the more you suffer the sorrows. So leading you to the ultimate state of supreme bliss, supreme self. The moment you ultimately, the same law of attachment to detachment, it will lead you to the ultimate state of attaching to the supreme self, detachment to the world. Right now, what is the attachment of every human being is caught up, and suffering is because of name, fame, power, position, status, money, and family. These are the toys that make your joys, and everybody is terribly attached, and the detachment is unknown because you don't have anything higher to anchor, higher to fix, higher to pursue, higher to understand. There is no maturity. So renunciation is gives you that maturity, that higher vision, a nobler ideal, a purpose, a cause beyond your personal, selfish, and self centered lifestyle, which is causing suffering and sorrow of these terrible attachments. So, what is the guidance given is just fix an unselfish goal. You work for welfare of the world or welfare, or you can work for the self realization, a God realization, to the extent you can think of. The moment your mind fix it on the supreme self and function in the day-to-day duties and responsibilities, you will be commensurate with peace and bliss. You will be experiencing happiness and bliss, and functioning does consistently, continuously, by gaining more and more knowledge of the reality of your original identity and practice renunciation from this worldly entanglement. You slowly gaining more and more peace and bliss, ultimately end up in realization of the supreme self, the Atman. So the detachment is renunciation, renunciation is bliss, and the bliss is permanent. So the bliss and renunciation is through knowledge of inner self, and then no more the world will affect you anymore. You live in this world, you enjoy the world, but you have nothing to do with this world. Like a lotus leaf in water, the leaf is living in touch with water, but water will not touch the leaf because it has got a greasy surface. Similarly, you are in the world, enjoying the world, but you have nothing to do with this world. World will not tease you, world will not affect you. You will enjoy the peace and bliss. This is the technique, this is the skill, this is an art one has to learn and practice, for which you got to drop your ego, your individual identity, your local self, your limited self, your personality. Then you will be able to enjoy this supreme peace and bliss, which is the secret of renunciation, the life of peace and bliss. We will continue with the next topic. Renunciation heralds meditation. How renunciation, once you experience, you will be qualified and you automatically take up the practice of meditation. You cruise into meditation, which we'll take up in the next class. Thank you very much. Hari Om.